Hello, and welcome to the Authentically Elisa podcast, Unmasking Your True Self. I'm Elisa Bogarts, your guide on this journey to discovering the most genuine version of yourself. Each episode is a step towards unveiling the incredible power that lies within you as we strip away all the shoulds and shine a light on the coulds. Together, we'll explore the path of self-empowerment, self-confidence, and the courage to be unapologetically you. Thank you for being here. So let's dive into today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about how to get out of your own way. And my guest today is Andrew Bayon, and he really helps people cultivate inner strength and guidance so they can face challenges and uncertainty with equanimity. He created the nature effect as a method to expand self-awareness while also deepening our personal bond with the natural world. In addition to the True Nature Trail course, Andrew also leads an online community of regenerative-minded and climate-conscious leaders called Earth Tribes. Welcome, Andrew. How you doing?
Thanks, Elisa. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you're here and that we've been working together. And I remember when we first met, I absolutely fell in love with what you do because it kind of combines two passions of mine as well, right? This whole personal growth and self-awareness, but also the environment, which is something that's super important to me. So tell us how you, got into this and kind of how it kind of evolved into having these sort of two things combined and why you're just so passionate about it.
Thank you. I think I've been the beneficiary of a lot of experiences in nature that have really stuck with me. Just these beautiful places, hiking in the forests of New England is where I grew up. But also I've been to Costa Rica and just the vibrance of the rainforest. I think what it's left me with the compound effect of those experiences, just this gratitude for being able to share life on this planet with so many amazing other beings. And it just, for whatever reason, I think because of how I was raised, my mom as a gardener taught me all about what's going on underneath the soil, to just respect and appreciate that we are connected to Earth inherently. And so I grew up with that understanding, and I fell in love with, in my late teens, taking people out into nature because I love that feeling of taking people to a beautiful place and you can see that they're moved by it. Mm-hmm. And I think it connects to self-growth or self-development because, at least for me, I always see something that I may not have seen just going about my routine in my daily life, doing my work on my computer. When I'm out in the natural world, there's, I think, another lens of truth that I'm able to see. And I realize that this is not like an Andrew thing. This is a human being thing. And so I went from taking people out into nature to using nature as a mirror for people to be able to look within. And that's another piece that is just as important to me as this conversation, which is, fortunately, there's lots of people talking about nowadays. How do we approach climate change, climate restoration, and how do we really heal and restore the human relationship with Earth? And that has to start with humans, right? We have to, we need to be well in order to have these conversations and these important conversations about solutions. And so I'm also interested in people being freed up to go after what they want. I feel very fortunate that I've had mentors and people that have encouraged me to follow these experiences and kind of flush out how I want to turn around and share them with people. So yeah, I think that's hopefully that resonates in terms of the connection between this passion for nature and this the same juice that I think it gives me to help people see who they really are and what they're capable of.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, I had so many thoughts as you were speaking, like one of them being That's very much what and like actually was like the catalyst of this whole podcast. Cause before, now I'm obviously more of like a kind of business coach and project manager in my business. But before I was a confidence coach. And that was my main thing, was to help people be confident in themselves so they can make their life the way that they want it to, and do it in a way just being like, this is what I want and I'm going to go after it. So I think we were very much like aligned on that. And as you were talking about the environment and, how can we make change, it's there's something about falling in love with the environment again, like as you were talking about
Mm,
that, being out in nature, yeah, and being well enough to go out there and experience it and falling in love with it, and then be like, I want to protect this. Like, what can I do myself
yes.
to keep this beauty, to keep this, wonderfulness that we have in the world, and be
Mm,
connected to it, and think about that, and think about like the consequences of the things that we do. I always had this I guess not like a conflict, but a different way of thinking where like, I always turn lights off. Right. And then
mm,
some people are like, oh, whatever, like, um, I don't pay for my electricity in this building, or I don't pay for my hot water. And I'm like, right, but I don't care about the cost of it, or whatever, electricity is cheap. And I was like, no, I don't care about the cost. I care about the environmental impact of me keeping the lights
yes.
on. And some people were like, and I always was interested that I always had this different viewpoint of it, where people were just like, oh, I'm just saving money, or who cares about whatever. And I'm like, well, what about the environment? Like, and I don't think
Yeah.
many people see it that way, which is, I find interesting.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being willing to, to stand for it, to share that. It's really an inquiry. It's like, what can we do that honors that connection? I know you felt that in nature, and I think by asking those questions and being willing to embrace those own personal practices, like you're talking about with shutting off lights, and um, that really honors that connection with nature. And I think each one of these conversations where we share these things can be little um, plot points along the way for people to see their own, to bring consciousness to what we're doing, right? And I think I have compassion that, there's not a whole ton of societal structures, at least for me growing up, that really, um, I think, allow us to see the truth of the human connection with nature. There's a lot of things separating us and dividing us, and really this awareness is coming back to the wholeness of humanity and nature, and how in this modern era with all the technology and everything that we have, how do we honor that? I like that you're honoring that for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I was always sort of proud of it, to be like, oh, no, I'm going to give my perspective on this. And I hope that, in some way they might be like, oh, yeah, it's like, yeah, good thing to think about. And I think that's how even these tiny little things, how we can start to help change people to see things in a different way.
Yes, exactly.
And of course, this podcast is all about authenticity. So, what does authenticity mean to you? I've always found you to be a very authentic person, and so I'd love to know.
Mm. Thank you. I think I appreciate that acknowledgement, and I think you and I share that, whatever you want to call it, a vibration. And I think that when we first talked, I appreciated that you are that. I mean, your podcast is authentically Elisa for a reason, right?
Yeah,
Um, I when I think of it, to answer your question of what is it? It's just there's no pretense, and what I mean by that is, like, I'm still learning. I'm still figuring out. I think I'm going to be learning and discovering things for the rest of my life. And every day I do something. It's like, why the heck did I do that? Like, what? I thought I learned that lesson already. So
yeah,
I think authenticity is this alignment with, am I living my true self? And that's in my communication. It's in my own thoughts. When I'm not aligned, I'm usually worried about what other people are thinking. I'm worried about the image of something, how I'm showing up, how other people are perceiving it. Maybe I'm being critical on myself. And I don't think when I think of being authentic in the world, is like, that's not the authentic self. That's probably some kind of fear or doubt manifesting.
right.
And so authenticity is this process of coming back to the self. And no one can tell you what's authentic for you. You have to generate that from within. And I think it's like unplugging from these um, habits of looking to the outside for the answer. And the real authenticity comes from within.
Yes, absolutely. And so I love this is like the perfect kind of segue into what we want to talk about today about like, kind of how to get out of your own way because all these things come up. And I know that you love talking about, like the impact that these things can have on our sort of our confidence, things like self-doubt, right? Imposter syndrome, fear of failure, fear of success, even judgments from others, of that fear of it, and like and all the resistance that can have on us that can really stop us. And then all that gets kind of in our way. But really, it's all of that, like how to get out of your own way. All those things are in our own heads. And so
Correct.
I'm very excited to kind of dive into this about how we can kind of get out of our own way in terms of these different subjects. So let's maybe start with self-doubt and imposter syndrome. Like
Mm.
talk about that and kind of like how we can maybe a tip on how we can kind of get out of our own way. And
Well, again, I can only share from my own experience of probably spending most of my adult life overly concerned in what other people are thinking. I know not everyone has that exact path, but I see that the self-doubt's connected with that because my focus, right? Like the currency of our attention is incredibly powerful,
hmm
right? If I tell you to close your eyes and think about the color red, think about the color red, you get up and walk around your apartment, wherever you're listening to this, you're going to see red everywhere because you're focusing on it. And I so often was living under the guise of like, oh, I'm not ready yet, or I don't know how. And because of that, I can't fully step into the thing that I want to do. Or look at all these other people who have it all figured out, but we forget that they too are scared.
yes.
And maybe they're just farther along their journey and are more comfortable stepping into and sharing their truth. And when I say truth, I just mean your own personal, authentic, um, it could be your own beliefs, right? Or something like standing for healing and restoring our relationship with nature, since we've talked about that, is something I consider to be part of my truth. So self-doubt comes in because we think we're not enough. Again, my opinion. I think that's one of the core human fears, is that we're not enough. So for my own journey, it's this, I'm looking for evidence from the outside of me being ready while forgetting that that choice to take imperfect action or to speak my truth is really just training a habit. We're habitual beings. So which habits are we training? Those that feed self-doubt and not being enough or not being ready, or those that just we're practicing standing for our authentic selves and speaking that? I think that's what creates confidence. Is it's not some, you know, jewel that we have to go find somewhere. It's something that we can cultivate. And I think I love that you've probably helped so many people with finding their own authentic confidence in the work that you've done. And I think for me, confidence just comes from showing up with a commitment. It's a product of showing up with a commitment.
Yeah, interesting perspective. Showing up with a commitment, and I think it's true. And I think that the more that you, like you're saying, like the habitual side of it, the more you practice something, the more confident you can feel about it. And the less, and you're right, like when you focus on, you know, I'm able to do this, I can do this, I am enough, as opposed to I'm not enough, and that self doubt and that imposter syndrome, like where is your focus? And that will help to build the confidence. And, but yeah, we all have it. And you're right. Like, you see some people and maybe they don't seem to have these things, but I mean, we all do in some way, shape, or form, even if, as we grow and improve. So even someone, who does seem like they have it all, or they've made so much money in their business or whatever, like as they grow and scale, they have more problems or they have different problems, right? And then that self-doubt, maybe imposter syndrome kind of creeps in because now they're at this new level they haven't been at before and they're playing with different people or, so like I feel like whatever we do as we learn and we grow, these do come in and it's just like, okay, how can you sort of like recognize it and see it and be like, okay, I can overcome this and not let it
Yes.
get in your way from progressing forward.
Yeah. Exactly. Well said. It's a journey, and those, I think, because we're human, these pieces will keep coming back, like the opportunities to slip into self-doubt, or you reach the next level, and then that feels uncomfortable. But I think it's having grace for our own humanity, and that this is just part of human nature. We're afraid of things like I was, of worrying about, what other people think. It's just part of the process that we can recognize that we're not committed to. And as you pointed out, what whatever we believe, we will find evidence to support, and then we'll find that. So we get to be conscious with what we're choosing to believe, especially about ourselves and our own capacity, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I love how you said that, there is no guru to seek out that's going to give us some magic, whatever that,
Yeah.
like just like, ding, now you're confident, right? Like there are people definitely that can teach you the skills to become more confident or to get out of your own way and to transform that self-doubt, and those are like skills and tools and practices that we can have. But you're right, it is all within us. It is our own thoughts. And yeah, and one of the things I think is always the most important is the awareness of it. Like, do you even realize what you're saying to yourself all the time or the thoughts that
Yes.
you have, and sometimes it can even just be like, you're having some rant in your brain about something, and you can choose to follow that path, into cascading other thoughts, and who knows where it might go. You get more agitated or whatever. Or you can maybe recognize and be like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm having this thought about, or I'm noticing that I'm angry, and kind of remove yourself from it. And then you can choose, like, this is just a thought. I don't have to follow it.
Yes.
What would I like to think instead? Or maybe I just need to be present right now. I don't need to try and like convince myself of anything or build up my confidence. But maybe I'll just be present right now instead of beating myself up.
Correct.
Be
Right.
present and then maybe think of something more positive. Yeah.
You're spot on, Elisa. Yeah. Awareness. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've talked about this a little bit about sort of the fear of being judged by others, worrying about what they think, or fear of failure,
Mhm.
fear of success. Let's dive into those a little bit.
Mhm. I think the common one, again, just speaking from my own experience, my I was so afraid for so many years of failing. I still am. Okay, I still am afraid of not hitting, not having an impact, right? Not making as big a difference as I can for people. Or a big fear for me is that the by at the end of my life, we haven't made real headway in terms of um, a more harmonious relationship with the natural world, which I would view as, because that's such a personal commitment to me, that it would be a failure on myself, right? So I think it's easy to look at a goal that we have, especially when it's so much bigger than ourselves, and be afraid of not hitting it. I think what has really helped, whether it be, if you're listening, whatever the thing is that you're afraid of, it might not be failure. It might be fears of being judged by others, or not knowing if you have what it takes, right? That's the fear of success, is, can I actually handle it? And the thing that I come back to whenever I'm grounded in myself, and I'm reminded that if we have that commitment, that is the piece that can carry us through all of that, the very human experience of the fears. I have a great friend that just did a live event, her first live event for her business yesterday. And she said, man, I was in the bathroom crying right before it happened. Like, she's totally committed, she's doing it, but that human experience comes up. And I think what I would offer to people is just to not make that wrong. We
Right.
probably each have our own manifestation of how fear comes up. But I love the point you just shared with us about awareness, because when you're mindful that the thoughts you're having are not making you feel very good, and that you're actually not committed to them, that's the inflection point to then come back to your commitment. And when your commitment is bigger than yourself or bigger than, what will people think if I don't make it? It's not about that. And it's about the gift of being able to speak our truth and letting go of who it makes a difference for, right? But if it's all about me, then I'm not gonna share it, because what if it doesn't go as planned? That's the piece about letting go. And I think between letting go and reconnecting to the commitment, the fears, it's not that they totally go away. I think that definition of courage that I've always really loved is, it's not the absence of fear that makes courage present. It's feeling the fear and taking the action anyways. What do you see about that on your journey? Because I know
And
you've
I was
worked through
actually,
some stuff.
I just thinking that same thing, that like you, like, the thing about fear of failure, you're never going to know if you're going to fail if you don't try.
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah.
so you can sit there and think about all the, horrible things that could happen or what have you. But if you don't, do it, if you don't go for it, you'll never know.
No.
And also knowing that, like, if it doesn't go the way, the perfect way that you want it to go, then, that's okay. Maybe it looks different than you thought it was going to look, or maybe it didn't work out the way you thought that it wanted to. And, I see this all, with my clients about, or why people sort of come to me with launching their coaching programs, right? It's because it didn't work. And so now they're like, okay, maybe I need a better system. Or the first time, the first time I did launch my coaching program, um, yeah, people didn't show up. Nobody did buy,
Yep.
but I didn't really have
Kept
fear of
going.
failure then. I was just like, I'm going to do it anyway. And then it kind
Yep.
of didn't work. And I was like, oh, it was a bit of a blow to the ego. And I was like, well, what, but the way that I am kind of wired and why project management kind of works so well for me is because I'm always like, okay, what's the lesson learned? Like, I almost do like a post-mortem or a retrospective on myself and be like, okay, what can I do better? What can I do differently? And like, how can I improve for the next time? So I'm always thinking about how I can, improve.
Mm.
But yeah, this idea of fear of success. I only got introduced to this maybe like a year ago, and I was like, what? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, because I never really uh like in my own life, I've done a lot of sort of, people used to call me like gutsy, because I would just kind of do things as I wanted to do them, right? Which is kind of was like the whole foundation of why I went into sort of confidence coaching, the foundation of
Mm.
the book that I wrote. Um and that was just like, because I never really had the fear of success. And I think that that's maybe what didn't stop me, even in terms of my corporate career. I just kind of like kept going, and it was like, okay, well, yeah, I can do this job now. Like, you think I can do that? I got the skills for that. Like, okay, I'll do that. Like, you want to pay me more money for that? Like, okay, sweet. Like, I don't know. I just kind of like, it just kind of kept on going. And of course there are times where I was like, ooh, like, can I actually do this? But I was always like, was able to, just kind of give my head a shake and be like, of course you can. You've done that.
Yes.
And finding that evidence to prove that you can, I think is really
Right.
helpful.
Yeah. It sounds like you have really even earlier healthy self-talk. Like um, that's one of the things that we can control, is how we talk to ourselves. But back to your awareness piece, is that are we being kind to ourselves? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things for me that, sometimes I've talked to myself like I would never talk to my best friend or someone that I'm coaching. Like, so that's interesting. Why would I speak to myself like that? So I think having that awareness that even if the impact, or I should say, if something doesn't go as planned, like you launch your coaching program and no one signs up, it's like, instead of going into self-criticism, you went into, all right, how can I learn from this? And I think that's such a mark of a leader.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I always try to see how you can improve or shift, right? Like, okay, maybe that didn't work and maybe you don't want to go down that path. Okay, what do you want to do now? But it's always like, okay, what now? I guess.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
I love the phrase, so what, now what?
Mm,
How can you shake it off? So what? Now what?
yes.
So let's
With
talk
new
about,
information.
yes, with new information, yes, and more like new, yeah, like data, right? That you can look at and use to your advantage to figure out what you want to do.
Hmm.
Let's talk about resistance.
Oh, this is a good one.
This is a good one.
It's a real good one. Um, you and I were just talking about this, about um, social media, right?
Mm.
And it sometimes can be very sneaky. Again, resistance has manifested for me so often in a very sneaky way that's not like, oh no, I'm not gonna write that blog. I just don't. I can't. It shows up instead of that, like, oh, maybe tomorrow I'll write something, and then it'll be like, no, that's not quite there. I'll come back to it tomorrow, or next week, right? And so I think resistance is this, whatever the block is that shows up to block the fulfillment of the thing that you want to do. In this case, in this example of posting the blog. And um, resistance is, I think, rooted to connect back to the other things that we have discussed in some kind of fear that it's only going to show up in it's not going to make the difference that we intend, right?
Mm.
Acknowledging the resistance. There's a great book out there that's come up for me several times already in thinking about this. It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And he really has a sense of humor with his own resistance as a writer. And I think that's such a key piece to, though we may not see all the reasons that resistance shows up, is to be able to have some grace with ourselves that this stuff happens.
Happens to all of us all the time. I don't know, you think about procrastination or does not wanting to do something or like, you know, choosing to do something else and you know something that you need to do. Like I know that one big resistance I have with my business is the sales side of it, reaching out to people and reminding them like, hey, we had this conversation, or like, oh, like I have something that I think that you would be useful for you. And in like my mind, it's kind of like this, like, well, I don't want to bother people. I think I'm doing it
Yeah.
right, or I don't want to be annoying, or like I don't want to be pushy, or they already kind of said no, maybe I don't know, like, and I have this like kind of hesitation, sort of resistance of like, like walking on eggshells that don't really exist.
Yep.
I guess maybe they're like my own eggshells or something, and I find that interesting, and I think that that is and that's almost a bit of negative self talk, right? That I am an annoying individual, and I'm going to annoy them, and they're going to get mad at me, and then
Yep.
all hell's going to break loose and everything's going to fail and catastrophe. And
Mm.
so it was like, okay, I just won't. And there it is.
You're absolutely recreating the experience that I have gone through and still go through sometimes. That, like, oh, I don't want to bother them. There was I had a business when I was in San Diego called San Diego Date Ideas. I planned like anniversaries and birthdays for couples, birthday celebrations. And there was one guy I'll never forget. It was the third time I followed up with him because my business coach was like, you have to follow up. The gold's in the follow up. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to. The whole world that you exactly just described. And I called him and he's like, Andy, thank you so much for calling me. I'm so glad you did. I've been meaning to get back to you. And it blew my mind. I thought he was going to like block me or something. But
Right.
it points to what is the self-talk that's going on around the uncomfortable action that you're taking, and the real victory being in the action. And then, they are at where they're at, and they'll tell you if they don't want to be contacted, but at least we're honoring our intention by following through.
Exactly. Exactly. And something that I love so much, and that was always like as part of the confidence coaching I did, was about affirmations. And I actually have these affirmations that I say to myself every day with my business. And they are, if I speak from the heart and be authentic, I can sell. People are busy and need nudges and reminders, and I have the right leads. The people that come into my world are the right people for me. And
It's,
so those are the three things I try to tell myself every day, because I'm not being some,
mm,
pushy, annoying person, but, people do need nudges and reminders. And if I do speak from the heart and I'm not some like, arrogant salesperson that doesn't resonate with me, that's not in alignment, but if I speak from my heart and be authentic, then I can sell.
yes. Yeah. It's such a great gauge. It's a metric to follow. Is like, am I aligned in what I'm offering? Am I standing for this? Do I believe in it? do I see it could make a difference? Absolutely. Then that final piece is to share it. And
Exactly. Yes. And get out of our own way.
exactly.
Oh, well, this has just been so awesome. I think some of the key takeaways why, we're talking about this resistance and getting out of our own way and kind of having some grace and even maybe a bit of humor about it and really acknowledging it and seeing it for what it is and that it's actually,
Mm.
normal. And then we can all move past it and to really have that commitment to some things which can help you drive you forward and really get out of your own way. So, Andrew, how can our listeners find you online?
This has been a great conversation, Elisa. Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions, and I'm glad I got to hear some of your story too.
Yeah,
That's
thank you
a
for being
gift
here.
to be able to share with the people listening. So thank you. I am pretty active on LinkedIn under Andrew Bayon, and as well as Instagram, and that is Nature Effect, EFFECT Connections, Nature Effect Connections.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll put those in the show notes for everyone. So do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
I'd like to come back to something that you said, and that's that there is no guru to seek. I think that's where I tripped up for many years, is searching like blindly for the answers outside of myself. Yes, I had intentions. I would go take courses. I'm grateful for so many of the things that I've learned, the knowledge that I accrued, but I think I was missing the point in that the spotlight really could have been shined within. Now, the journey in its time was perfect. And it empowers me to believe that everything happens in the time that it's supposed to. So maybe you're hearing something here right now, and maybe it's the perfect time to hear it, or it's a reminder of something. And so I would just highlight that and say, we can seek advice from people and learn from others. Absolutely. But the answers to the real truth of what's going to give us that fulfillment and happiness, I think those are found within. And the more time we sit with that inquiry without having to immediately produce the answer is the
Mhm.
greatest gift we can give to ourselves. There is no guru to seek. He or she is within.
Yes. Yes, I 100% agree with that. And I think that um, it can be difficult in which to do that, or maybe you don't really know kind of where to start or how to do that, or maybe you've tried certain ways. And I think that's where we can kind of um, look to people like Andrew and the work that he does to help guide you to look within. Like this is kind of how you can start to do that, or maybe like ask you questions or guide you in a certain way because we can learn so much, and of course there is great tools and things out there, but yeah, sometimes we need that person to guide us or show us a new way and a new perspective to do that inward looking, because you're right, it is within us. And sometimes it can just be hard to find because it's buried under so much stuff.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Back to the human condition. Nobody's perfect, but you're right. Having that safe space in which those things can come out, the judgment-free listening, that's what I think if we take stock of the people that we enjoy most in our lives, that we feel safe around, they give us that space to be able to be authentically ourselves.
Exactly. Oh, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. And
Thanks for sharing this message and for giving people like me a chance to speak to your audience. I really appreciate you and your questions, and for everyone listening. Thank you too.
yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it inspired you to live a more authentic life. I'd love your help in inspiring more people to live authentically. So please follow, rate, and leave a review so we can create a ripple effect of authenticity. Until next time, stay true to you, be bold, and thrive on your own terms. This is Elisa, signing off authentically.